I checked the record, and back in April, you said in another interview that James Comey's actions were all blowing up in his face. You were probably right at the time. I'm not questioning the accuracy of it, but I'm wondering, here we are months later, it doesn't seem like he's been held accountable, Congressman, and doesn't that frustrate people?
It's, to me, very frustrating. I mean, he had his big book tour. He was hailed as a hero. And then he got caught. I think it was actually Brett Baer that caught him on the fact that he had said privately that General Flynn had not lied. Then when he was confronted with it, he didn't recall saying that. And then as more and more things come out, yeah, it did show that his record was not what he claimed it was, and he has not really been held accountable. Now, here he is, the former FBI director who conducted so many interrogations in private, and then you would find things being selectively leaked out, including excerpts from Russia reports and everything else. And now he wants to be all out in public. Again, this to me is really, it is hypocritical. It's a double standard that he's applying to himself. And really, the media shouldn't let him get away with it, even I'm not counting on too much help from the mainstream media.
Congressman, let me ask you about another key player in this, Loretta Lynch. As Peter Doocy reported, they're also, your fellow Republicans are trying to bring her in for testimony. In addition to the Bill Clinton tarmac meeting and wanting to get more information about that, which is a critical piece here, James Comey, in his book, teased out that there was some sort of a reason that he didn't really tell the public that she was, Lynch, tortured in her response to the Clinton probe, that maybe there was some reason why she was conflicted. What do we know about that?
You know, I don't recall all the details, other than the fact that I think Comey was taken in by that. I think that was a story being put out by the Russians, and he believed it, that there was something that was going to be a scandal with Loretta Lynch, and he wanted to go forward on his own because he thought this would tarnish the investigation. I think that was literally fake news or phony news that he was taking from a source that I think turned out to be wrong. I mean, he was relying on wrong information. I think he was taken in by
Congressman,
it. The director of the FBI being taken in.
Sure. Congressman, I got 30 seconds. Peter Doocy mentioned something else. As you know, all too well, for your party, you're going out of power in the House in a few weeks. The public also wants to know tonight, are you going to get some of these FISA documents about the surveillance of Carter Page, for example? Is the president going to declassify that? Are Republicans in their final days going to push to get more information out about what went on in the Obama days?
We should, and I certainly don't know why the president does not declassify them. To me, it would show that this investigation, this whole FBI investigation of Russia, followed by the special prosecutor, had no basis. There was no reason for it. There was no legal justification for it. And if they were basing it all on Carter Page and George Papadopoulos, it shows this investigation never should have been started in the first place. It was an investigation in search of a crime, not to solve a crime, but to try to find one. And so far, they haven't found anything involving Russian collusion after all this time. 2 years.
Congressman, appreciate you coming in. Hope you had a good Thanksgiving.
Thank you. Yes, sir. You too.
All right. Here to respond, a Democrat, Brian Dean Wright. He is a former CIA officer. Good evening, Brian.
Good evening.
Let's start right there where the congressman left off. Where is the accountability? Here we are almost 2 years into the Trump administration. It seems to me we still don't know. If you're a Democrat, you don't know whether or not there was collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russians. The president says there wasn't, but you still don't have an end to the Mueller investigation. And if you're a Republican tonight, you're wondering, why don't we still know exactly what James Comey and Loretta Lynch did?
Yeah, and I think what this begs is the question that a lot of Americans ask, irrespective of party, is what about the equal justice that we should all face, irrespective of our power or of our money? And I think that what you're seeing with this Comey shenanigan is really an example of that, of somebody who does have power and has money and can seemingly get away with something. And that makes all of us frustrated because it makes us question.
Yeah. Now, it looks like actually Brian's satellite might have gone down. Are you back, Brian?
I can sure hear you.
Okay. Oh, there you are. Okay, I'm sorry. I know you got a little bit of delay out there in Washington State. Pick up where you left off there.
The bottom line is if we deny this open hearing and don't couple it with this private hearing, what we will allow is Comey to hide behind potentially issues of perjury, right? Because the Department of Justice right now is investigating him for leaking. And if we don't hold him to an account, then I think what you're going to see is basically an arsonist who started a forest fire, and he's going to be complaining about it the whole time, and we can't hold his feet to the very fire that he started.
And you wonder, you're a Democrat, as I mentioned. Democrats were not happy with the way he handled the Clinton investigation. Now you have Republicans who are not happy with the way he handled the Trump investigation. And as you say, what about the rest of the FBI? I've been waiting for the Trump Justice Department to get to the bottom of that. Not just Comey and his leaking, Andrew McCabe, who lost his job, Strzok and Page, the FBI agents who were texting back and forth their hatred of Donald Trump. Why don't we still have those answers?
Well, again, I'll tell you, this goes beyond, I think, what a lot of us in the Democratic Party are saying publicly. And I think privately, folks that I've talked to on Capitol Hill say, look, we're hitching our wagons to a bureau that very clearly, through the IG report, has shown they're up to some pretty bad things, very questionable things, that if it were to happen to us, we'd be raising, holy hell. So I think that privately Democrats are saying FBI needs to be held to account here, and they haven't been so far, and that's wrong. Irrespective of party, that is wrong.
Yeah. Okay, I've got 30 seconds. Adam Schiff is going to be the Democrat who will be taking over the House Intel Committee. Another thing he says he wants to investigate is the U.S. Intel assessment of Jamal Khashoggi. As you know, the president has come under criticism for not seeming to accept the CIA's analysis. You're a former CIA official, as I noted. Where do you think all of that stands tonight?
Look, everybody wants to think that the intelligence community can come up with 100% truth or 100% certainty with their assessments, and that's just not how it works. We give assessments that were high or medium or low degrees of confidence based on our understanding of our sources and different kinds of sources we get. But the bottom line, this is going to be a political decision. Do we want to make our bed with some folks that are of questionable character for broader strategic interest? Every president has done it, Democrat or Republican alike. So are we going to give Trump the leash to do the same? And that's what this really boils down to.
All right, Brian Dean Wright, appreciate you coming in. The president has made clear in recent days that he sees Saudi Arabia as still a key ally, particularly in the fight against terrorists and in dealing with Iran. That debate is going to continue. Appreciate you coming in, Brian.
Absolutely. Pleasure, brother.
All right. Still ahead. The commander-in-chief escalates his war of words against the Chief Justice, John Roberts. And law professor Jonathan Turley says Roberts should clean up some of the politics in his own house before throwing stones at the president. He's here to explain. Next.
We're getting some terrible decisions from the Ninth Circuit, as usual.
President Trump there spending Thanksgiving with his family at Mar-a-Lago in Palm Beach. But the holiday did not slow down his recent feud with the Chief Justice, John Roberts, who the president is publicly slamming for siding with a lower court judge over migrants seeking asylum. White House correspondent Kevin Corke has been traveling with the president and has the story for us tonight from Florida.
And good evening. The back and forth between the president and the Chief Justice actually stems back to the president's comments about Judge John Tiger's nationwide injunction to effectively stop the president's new policies on asylum along the U.S. border. It's a hot topic, and to say the least, we have seen this before. A lower-level federal judge, and an Obama appointee for that matter, making a ruling to effectively thwart the Trump administration, forcing it now to go through the courts before the policy can take effect. The president calling the judge an Obama judge, which the Chief Justice rejected, saying we do not have Obama judges or Trump judges, Bush judges or Clinton judges. What we have is an extraordinary group of dedicated judges doing their level best to do equal right to those appearing before them. That independent judiciary is something we should all be thankful for. But let's be frank, given the Ninth Circuit's well-earned reputation for being progressive and frequently ruling against the president, well, Mr. Trump said it's high time someone called them out for their judicial activism.
We're getting some terrible decisions from the Ninth Circuit, as usual. It's a shame. It's a shame. It's a disgrace, frankly. And essentially, they're legislating. It's not right, and it's been going on like that for a long time. We have to use some common sense. This Ninth Circuit, everybody knows it. It's totally out of control.
Meanwhile, back online, Chuck Grassley weighed in on this topic. He said this: Chief Justice Roberts rebuked Trump for a comment he made about a judge's decision on asylum. I don't recall the chief attacking Obama when that president rebuked Alito during a State of the Union. Just a snapshot, Ed, of the intensity surrounding this debate, which obviously doesn't look like it will be abating anytime soon. Ed, back to you.
No doubt about it. Thank you, Kevin. Here now with more, Jonathan Turley, of course, a constitutional law professor at George Washington University. He joins us now live. Jonathan, I wonder, it's interesting. I spoke over the weekend with Andrew McCarthy, and we're going to get to in a moment whether it's wise for the president to continue attacking various federal judges. It's not the first time he's done that. But let's start with Andrew McCarthy over the weekend was telling me, look, Chief Justice Roberts should know there are, in fact, Obama judges. They are trying to undermine the president's agenda, and politics has been played for a long time here, and maybe this is one that the Chief Justice should have sat out.
Well, it's a very important act for the Chief Justice to engage in any tit-for-tat with a politician, let alone the president. Presidents have criticized the Supreme Court since really the earliest days of the Republic. But having said that, I am sympathetic with the Chief Justice's decision. You know, he has remained silent for a couple of years. The president has been unrelenting in what I think are unfair attacks on many judges. And I think he felt that as the head of the judiciary, he had to say something. You know, where I have a slight problem, as I say in the column tomorrow on the Hill, is really the balance for Chief Justice Roberts in making these comments. There have been long controversies on the court with his own members engaging in political commentary, even going to political fundraisers, and he has never given nary an objection.
Yeah, Professor. In fact, Kevin Corke referenced this, what happened at President Obama's 2010 State of the Union. Watch this.
With all due deference to separation of powers, last week the Supreme Court reversed a century of law that I believe will open the floodgates for special interests, including foreign corporations, to spend without limit in our elections.
So there you had a president going after the Supreme Court. Yes, he said with all due deference, it wasn't a full-on slam, and you saw Justice Alito shaking his head saying that's not true. And then fast forward, that's 2010. July 2016, the heat of a campaign, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg says this about candidate Trump. He is a fake. He has no consistency about him. He says whatever comes into his head at the moment. He really has an ego. How has he gotten away with not turning over his tax returns? And I wonder, Professor, where was the Chief Justice to adjudicate that and to say, wait a second, that's not fair?
Well, first of all, I will disagree with Chairman Grassley in one respect, and that is President Obama is a politician. Alito is a jurist. He should never have made those objections public. That violated a long history of the court remaining neutral. But the point is still a good one. You know, many of us have criticized Justice Ginsburg for her many political statements, and she has apologized on occasion but continues to make them. It is really the domain of the Chief Justice to make it clear that this conduct is not appropriate for members of the court. And he should start there, I think, when he wants to fight the politicalization of the courts.
Professor, I've got less than 30 seconds. Is it wise for the president to take on the Chief Justice, who he may need in some close 5-4 decisions down the road?
Well, I've been very critical of the president's criticism of individual judges in the courts. I think he's dead wrong on this. You know, there's no question that there's judges with different ideologies. The Obama judges are likely to have a different interpretive approach than Trump judges. But the Chief Justice is right. They do try to get it right. And in case of Judge Tigar, I think that decision would likely have been issued by Republican and Democratic nominees on the court.
And, Professor, there's certainly a lot of Trump allies tonight who agree with what the president said, that the Ninth Circuit has been out of control for a long time. This debate will continue. Appreciate you coming in tonight.
Thanks, Ed.
Still ahead, Hillary Clinton opens up about migrants in a brand new interview, and her unexpected tough talk may sound a little bit like President Trump. It didn't sit well with some Democrats heading into 2020.
Well, I'd like to be president. Okay.
Flame. I think it is fair to say Europe has done its part and must send a very clear message. We are not going to be able to continue providing refuge and support because if we don't deal with the migration issue, it will continue to roil the body politic. Her comments drawing criticism from some fellow Democrats tonight and a lengthy walkback, it seemed like, from Mrs. Clinton, who later tweeted in part, quote, I have always been and remain a staunch advocate of comprehensive immigration reform. So could her clarification be yet another signal of a possible 2020 bid? Here now, Alicia Krause, host of The Conversation and a contributor for the Daily Wire. Jess O'Connell is the former CEO of the Democratic National Committee. We appreciate both of you joining us tonight.
Of course. Thanks.
Jess, I want to start with you. I woke up to this headline and I wrote it down, the New York Times on the jump page. Clinton warns Europe of migration peril. And I thought, hasn't President Trump been warning Europe, been warning the United States, warning the entire world for the last 2 years about this peril? Is she seeing the light?
Well, look, I think, as you just said, Hillary Clinton has been very clear throughout the entire course of her career that what she favors and is advocating for is comprehensive immigration reform. And with respect to Europe, I mean, immigration is a challenge that both Europeans and Americans have to solve together. But here in America, there's one party that is working for immigration reform that is humane, that does not separate families, and there's another party that wants to divide us. And I think that Hillary Clinton, go ahead.
I want to get Alicia in the conversation. I'll let you respond to her. But Alicia, I didn't really hear a clear answer there. And I wonder, they're from Jess. And Alicia, I wonder, when Hillary Clinton talks about the migrant crisis, it's illuminating to some Democrats. When Donald Trump talks about it, he's a racist.
It's also funny, you're totally right. What she gave in that interview to The Guardian seemed very different from her walk back today in a multiplicity of tweets saying, I am for comprehensive immigration reform. I am for not separating families at the border like President Trump has done, except she did serve as the Secretary of State and loved getting the endorsement from a president who did do that. Sorry to break it to Democrats, but his name was Barack Obama. So it is kind of funny how they seem to be very do as they say, not as they have done, and how they have governed in the past.
Yeah, and Jess, I want to give you a fair chance to jump in. Go ahead.
Yeah, Hillary Clinton was addressing this issue of rising populism, and that is really a result of the extremism that is based in racism. That's what she was addressing in this. She supports comprehensive immigration reform, as do all Democrats. What's happening right now is outrageous, and it is cruel what's happening on the borders. And look, there are real challenges at the borders. I'm in Arizona. There are challenges along the border here as well that we have to solve together, but that's going to take Republicans and Democrats coming together to do that. And there's only one party that's stepping up to that right now. We need Republicans to do the same.
But Alicia, is this a sign that Hillary Clinton is running and that she realizes I've got to find this balance? Maybe she didn't strike it yet, but she's going to have to crack down on illegal immigration and somehow please the Democrats on comprehensive reform.
Well, she is going to have to really toe a weird line here because the Democratic Party has moved so much to the left. You've seen this with the rise of, Bernie Sanders, even though he lost, Beto down in Texas, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, people having to move to the left in a lot of ways. But if she really does want to run in 2020, she still hasn't answered how she is going to gain back those Rust Belt voters that didn't turn out for her and that turned out for Donald Trump. I mean, she couldn't even get the Barack Obama coalition to come out and vote for her against Donald Trump. I don't see her being able to do that again in 2020.
Well, those voters turned out for Democrats in 2018 just now. And I think that, look, Hillary Clinton is a former First Lady, former Secretary of State, former U.S. Senator. There's hardly, she's one of the most qualified people ever to be president. I'd be surprised if she runs. But she is a stateswoman and has every right to be on the national and global stage.
Well, we'll be watching. She also, I should be honest and transparent, she took some pokes at Fox News. I'm sure we'll be hearing about that in the days ahead as well. Jess, Alicia, appreciate both coming in.
Thanks.
Thanks, Ed.
Still ahead, the dire warning from a former George W. Bush staffer who says America could be in for a rude awakening if it doesn't get the federal government and its spending in check.
We are right now sitting on a bubble that's going to explode, and it's going to be a real bad situation. And we better get rid of the debt.
Satisfied with Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin, specifically about Mnuchin's push to appoint a Federal Reserve chair who's been raising interest rates. The president trying to shoot it down in a tweet just moments ago, saying in part, quote, I am extremely happy and proud of the job being done by the Treasury Secretary, Steve Mnuchin. The fake news likes to write stories to the contrary, quoting phony sources or jealous people, but they are not true. They never like to ask me for a quote because it would kill the story. Well, one of the many tasks on Mnuchin's radar involves dealing with the national debt, something my next guest warns in a new Fox News op-ed could be a ticking time bomb, thanks to entitlement spending. Brad Blankman is a former deputy assistant to President George W. Bush. He joins me now. Good evening, Brad.
Hi, Ed.
Among other things you say in this op-ed, there are a lot of former Obama officials who like to point the finger at President Trump, but they forget an important point you make, which is that the number of people using Medicaid right now has exploded in the last couple of years. As I recall, that has to do with the creation of Obamacare.
Right.
And they said, hey, we're going to cover all of these new poor people. That is a very noble goal. We all should be trying to help the poor. But they never quite paid for it, did they?
They did not, and it's unsustainable currently and into the future. President Trump has done the right thing. He primed the pump. The economy could not be doing better on so many levels. And that's exactly why we need to get a handle now on the debt. We have to give confidence to the taxpayer and also the markets that we're being responsible. It's not only the annual budget where we're spending too much and taking in too less, but it's also the long-term liabilities of the entitlements of Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. We have people living longer. That's a good thing, but we also have to take care of them.
So I mentioned runaway spending under President Obama. We should be fair and point out under President Trump, we don't know how we're going to pay for these tax cuts. Now, the president says that economic growth, as you just alluded to, is going to help pay for the tax cut, and it's going to bring down that national debt you see soaring on our screen right now. Do you believe him?
I do, and the same pessimistic statements were made about Ronald Reagan. There's a cause and effect. It doesn't happen immediately. Our economy is like a huge aircraft carrier. It doesn't change on a dime, but we are going in the right direction. Every leading indicator not only suggests it, but proves it. So now is the time to really challenge Democrats, now that soon we'll have divided government, to put your money where your mouth is. Let's work together. Let's solve some problems. We always seem to wait for it to be a crisis before we ever do something. And now it's time to be responsible.
You teed it up perfectly. We got 30 seconds. So you've got Nancy Pelosi is going to have to share. She can't just throw, or at least I don't think she can, just continue to resist. She has a responsibility to govern if, in fact, she becomes the speaker. Do you see some deal cutting with Nancy Pelosi?
Well, the opportunity is there. We've never had a more transactional president. That's a good thing. He's not stuck on ideology. If it's a good deal, he'll make it. And the bottom line is we have to solve problems. Donald Trump is a problem solver.
It is, as you say, a ticking time bomb tonight. Brad Blankman, thanks for sounding that alarm. We'll have you back soon. All right. You know him for his role on The Beloved Show.
Even though he looks like a beggar, beneath all that hair, he's a smart dude.
It is a great product.
I know that.
I want more of it. Think y'all can handle some more business?
Always ready for that.
It looks like a little vintage Willie Robertson right there. He may be best known from the hit TV show Duck Dynasty. But now, as millions of Americans tap into their consumer spirit on Black Friday, Robertson is serving up a history lesson on the successful business founders who have turned America into an economic powerhouse. Willie Robertson is author of the brand new book, American Entrepreneur, How 400 Years of Risk Takers, Innovators, and Business Visionaries Built the USA. And I'm proud to say he's with us right now. Good to see you, Willie.
What's going on, Ed? How you doing?
I'm doing great. I saw you at the inaugural for President Trump. We were both out there in the rain. I was covering it. You were watching it all play out. How does it feel now to be a big, bad author?
It feels pretty good. And then I spoke to you again, and I had just come out of the hunting field where I bagged a deer. So, this time I just got through. I just pulled the food out of the oven. I've got all my family's over. We're still cooking and we're still eating, and had a little Scrabble tournament, and I just dominated that. So here we are. And talking about American Entrepreneur.
I didn't get an invite to the Robertson house. I'm still hopeful. Maybe next Thanksgiving, my friend. But I want to ask you, what has your family... You start with the duck call business, and now it seems to me it's a multi-million-dollar enterprise, frankly. What have you learned about the entrepreneurial spirit in America that you want our viewers to know about?
Well, we put the book out there because we went back all the way through American history and talked about really how entrepreneurs have helped shape the country. Then we also put our story in there about Dad coming out with this double-reeded duck call, and really taking a long time for that to to come about 40-something years before everybody knew who we were. So it was a long journey, and as kids we worked in all aspects of the business. Then I had my own little business ventures, selling gum and candy. I also sold earthworms for a while, and which is a tough business. As you probably know, I'm sure you were in the worming business as well, but that's a tough business.
No.
But we share our story. that would be impressive. We shared our story, and then we went back and talked about all kind of businesses all throughout this country, and some really unique stories in there. Some of the people you've heard of, and some of you may haven't heard of.
Yeah, I'd love to say that I started out as a poor earthworm salesman before I got into TV, but I can't say that honestly, Willie. But I wonder, I mentioned the Trump inaugural. What do you think this president gets about entrepreneurs, about capitalism, that socialists like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who are now rising to power in this new Congress, simply don't get?
Well, I do appreciate the fact that he has been a businessman. That was one of the things that attracted me at first to Trump, was that he had been in business. And so, you know, when the country's going good economically, there's opportunities for business, and so that's better for entrepreneurs everywhere. There's more chances to make money, and you know, it's a great country still for people who want to start businesses, and in some ways a lot easier now than back in the beginning of the country, where financially the country wasn't as stable, and so we chronicle those. In fact, a lot of the entrepreneurs had to help in and bail the government out and loan them money, and so but yeah, I think the state of America is good, the economy's good, and people can start businesses and do whatever they want to do.
Willie, in fact, I think we have some fresh video of people rushing out today to buy your book. Do we have that video of just so many people running out there for Black Friday? Just crowds and crowds of people.
Just crushing it.
Wait for it.
Just crushing to get this book.
Yeah, all these people lined up for you, Willie. Actually, I think that's Black Friday, not for you, but go ahead.
Oh, that wasn't just for my book? I bet some of those people were looking for that book, though. So there are easier ways to get it than having to rush in the store like that. I didn't get up this morning to do it. I have done that in the past.
I went to Amazon to buy your book today to prepare for this interview, and as I typed in your name, the first thing that came up, it said, Willie Robertson, bandana. That's what the search suggested. So people know you for that, sir.
Really? Well, I've done pretty good with the bandana and with that look for sure. I think with the Robertsons, with the beards, which became part of our business. People ask us, what was the marketing plan for the beards? And like my father says, that was a cold northwest wind when you're sitting out in the woods. So it came in handy for us, and it also came in handy for our business.
You have come a long way from an earthworm salesman, failed earthworm salesman, it sounded like, to a very successful entrepreneur. Everyone can go out and check out the book. Willie, always a pleasure to be with you, sir.
Great talking to you.
All right, take care. Meanwhile, disgraced former Senator Al Franken, remember his last Thanksgiving, he got into a lot of trouble. He's now sharing his latest reflections of, quote unquote, the women's experience. That's what he's calling it, 1 year after his resignation.